What's going on, guys? Welcome back to The Shelf, and today we are looking at Strange Darling, a 2024 new release film from director-writer J.T. Malner. Right off the bat, I want to say this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. There really is no way to adequately describe and discuss this movie without talking about spoilers. So because of that, this will be spoiler-filled. So if you haven't seen the film, definitely click off this video. The best way to watch this movie is not even watching a trailer. I haven't watched the trailer. I don't know if it gives it away. But if you're even remotely interested in watching this, either because it has Kyle Gallner, who is having a bit of a resurgence lately, or you just heard it was a good movie and that you should check it out, if you're remotely interested, just watch it. Don't watch a trailer. Don't watch this video, certainly. Just go check out the movie and then come back afterwards if you feel so inclined. Through social media osmosis, this movie came up on my radar and I knew that I wanted to check it out, so that's sort of what I did. I watched no trailers, and it unfortunately didn't come to any theaters near me, so I had to wait for it to first hit VOD, and then I needed to wait for that rental price to come down, because I'm not spending $20 on no new release movie when I know that shit's gonna come down. So finally got it to a good price. I think it's like $7 to rent right now. And I finally checked it out, and let's talk about it. So right off the bat, this movie is unorthodox. It tells the story in an unconventional way. It's advertised as a thriller in 6 chapters. That's like the title card. And so you're like, all right, cool. And then the movie starts, and it's like, chapter 3. And you're like, huh? So you realize that this is doing a thing where, similar to the first movie that came to mind was Memento, a Christopher Nolan film where the story is told out of order. So once I realized that that's what the movie was doing, I was pretty intrigued by that. The movie begins with this title crawl that was very reminiscent of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in terms of the delivery and the way it exposits what the movie is about to be. So I don't know if that was an intentional Texas Chainsaw reference, but it's the first thing I thought of. So chapter 3 begins, and we see a woman running from Kyle Gallner, who is just known as the demon in this movie. Right away, the way that the movie depicts this scene is obviously the woman running for her life, seemingly, is your protagonist. And the whole movie sort of takes that notion and turns it on its head and really creates something that kind of left me guessing a lot, which was really cool. So the way that this narrative operates, it sort of does the thing where, so you watch a chapter, and then it'll go from 3 to 5, and then it'll go to 1, and then it'll go to 4, and the movie's jumping around in that way. So you kind of have to keep track of, in your mind, where one chapter leaves off, and then where another one begins, so that in your mind, you're kind of having to do a bit more work and lay things out in a way that makes sense for yourself, which I found to be a really cool component. A lot of movies, don't necessarily ask a lot of the audience. I shouldn't say a lot of movies. Some movies don't require the audience to do a ton of legwork, and I think that this one does, but in a way that's really fun and rewarding, especially if I was to watch this again. I think I would get even more out of it. So in that chapter 3, we see, I think her name's the Lady. We don't get a real name for her. So it's the Lady and the Demon, Kyle Gallner and Willa Fitzgerald, whose name I forgot to mention up until this point. So we see her running from Kyle Gallner, and he's chasing her. They're actually in a car chase first. I should say that. This movie, my thoughts are similar to this movie all over the place, so just please bear with me here. Kyle Gallner is trying to get this girl, and they're in a car chase, and we see Kyle Gallner driving after her and just ripping cocaine, just doing tons of it. That makes you think, okay, he's just this crazed serial killer who's super drugged out and, not in his right mind, right? And then later on, we see another chapter that recontextualizes the events leading up to that event. And you realize that Kyle Gallner's character was drugged on ketamine, and he's using the cocaine to kind of snap himself out of it and reduce the effects of the ketamine. I don't know how that works. I've never done either of those those things. So, but in the logic of the film, it makes perfect sense, and you're able to understand why he's doing that. And so it recontextualizes that scene that you just watched. And the movie does that constantly. And it really makes you try to have to keep up with what's going on. And so similarly, there's another scene where Willa Fitzgerald's character is running from Kyle Gallner, and she's got like a wound on her head. And she's in the woods hiding from him, and she finds some alcohol. And she dunks the alcohol on her wound, which is like a pretty savvy thing for just a random person to know to do. I guess it's hard to say unless you're in that situation. In that moment too, I was like, that's kind of like, I mean, we don't know her background necessarily at this point, so I guess it's possible that she's like, a survivalist. The movie is set in like the wilderness, essentially, like mountain people area, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that she would know to do that. And so I clocked it, but I didn't think much of it, and I kind of moved on. And then when the big reveal happens, when the big flip happens, and you realize that she is actually the serial killer, it makes sense because she's probably had to do that before, and she's clearly not a victim, and so that makes it okay, now I know why she knew to do that. It's these little character things that are kind of sprinkled throughout the film that it does really well. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, so I should talk briefly about the performances, because as I've mentioned, Kyle Gallner and Willa Fitzgerald are getting to really do a lot in this movie. The way that the story is told, we don't know who is really who they say they are and what is actually going on. And neither do they. These two characters are just meeting for the first time. As the events unfold, we are seeing them having to play this game with the other character, and we're not quite sure what's going on because of where we are in the story, and we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle yet. Kyle Gallner's doing great here. He's really great at being able to kind of flip on the drop of a hat. Like, he's able to kind of turn, and you're not really sure if he's, just acting or if he's really like on some devious shit. There's a scene early on where the two of them are engaging in like some BDSM type stuff, and Willa Fitzgerald's character is like into kind of like being dominated, and so they are playing this sort of role play thing, and they have a safe word, and you see Kyle Gallner's character kind of flip, and he's like, and you're like, oh, is he like taking this situation too far? But then you realize that no, he wasn't. It was all kind of, part of the game or whatever. That reveal might be kind of obvious to some people. I thought it could have went either way, so I wasn't terribly surprised when it was revealed that they were in on it. They were just having fun. But that scene is sort of like a microcosm for the entire movie, because in the grand scheme of things, we don't know if Kyle Gallner is the serial killer yet, or we certainly don't expect it to be Willa Fitzgerald's character. So it really plays with your expectations of like, who is doing the antagonizing here, and who is actually like the person we're supposed to be rooting for. So by breaking up the movie into these chapters and then telling the chapters out of order, it sort of prolongs the turn where things sort of shift and you start to get a sense of what's actually happening. It sort of prolongs that moment, and it makes that moment, when it does come, more satisfying, because up until that point, we haven't been sure what to believe. We don't have all the information yet, and I really think it's a good utilization of this technique. If you're going to do this, if you're going to make a movie and have it be sort of told out of order, you really need to like justify that. Otherwise, it's going to feel just like a gimmick, and it doesn't feel like a gimmick here. It feels really cool, and it's like refreshing, and it's a nice way to deliver the exposition, because each sort of sequence recontextualizes the last one, as I've stated, and it really rewards repeat viewings, I would imagine. So I'm looking forward to watching this a second time. I really am. On the technical side, this movie is like really impressive. It's shot by Giovanni Ribisi, who is an actor that you may know, and he's also a director of photography. I didn't actually know that until I started doing a little bit of research for this movie, so cool little fun fact for you there. Cinematography is really on point. A lot of utilization of primary colors with some bright neon reds and blues, which sort of is like the aesthetic of the film is very red, it's very blue. As I've stated before, the film is set in a very mountainous region, so the cinematography makes use of all those beautiful vistas and such. So lots of woodland areas, and you know, it's a great backdrop for this thriller to play out against because there's not a lot of people around, presumably. This is a little bit more of a isolated area, so you really have like the local police force, and that's kind of it as far as like who's going to be around to help you when shit goes down. Although, everyone who lives in this area seems to have a gun on them at all times. So that does come into play, and it's just something that was kind of funny because it was like every time a random bystander would get involved, they almost always had a gun on them. So that kind of throws like another dynamic into the events that are playing out, because it's like, oh shit, now there's a third party in play and they have a gun, so how's that going to affect everything? Despite the movie being told out of order, it actually works really well because the pacing is still on point. It's very brisk. It's like a breezy hour 40, if that, and at no point was I bored. It really just, this movie kind of rips through. There's scenes of more intimate, dialogue-heavy scenes that are important for our characterization, and then the rest of it is all just kind of action and trying to keep up with what's happening and that kind of thing. So yeah, really brisk paced movie. I just want to highlight Willa Fitzgerald a little bit more here. She's really, really good in this. I don't think I've seen her in anything else. I think she's done some TV. I think she's on that show Reacher. But here she's very good. Her character is a deceitful one. So she's getting to portray a lot of different emotions based on the situation that she's in, and she's able to turn on a dime, similar to Kyle Gallner as well. They're both giving these really like layered performances, and they get to do a lot, and they're doing it all very well, I would say. As far as like the themes of this movie, there's a scene where, you know, after Kyle Gallner's character has been killed by Will Fitzgerald, these two cops arrive on the scene. Willa Fitzgerald's character makes it look like she was being SA'd by Kyle Gallner's character, and so when the police arrive, she's like freaking out and being very like frantic and stuff to kind of sell that narrative so that she can get out of trouble. So the female cop like right away like goes to her and like believes her, and you know, the male cop who's more seasoned is more skeptical and wants to get all the information before he assumes anything, which is probably the right move. And it turns out to be the right move. On the surface level, the movie is saying like, I don't know if it's making statements on women in general, or if it's just pointing out that you should have all the facts first before you act. I don't know quite how to feel about it. I don't really know exactly what the movie's trying to say with that, so it felt like something that I should definitely point out and address, but I haven't quite sussed out like my feelings on it yet. So it's definitely something to be discussed for sure, but again, not quite sure where I fall on it. I think it does make sense on a practical level. If there's like a crime scene unfolding and someone is claiming something, I think regardless of whether they're a man or a woman, you should definitely just get all the information first, because that's like how you carry out a police investigation. Again, some of this maybe not things I'm qualified to speak on, but I don't know. It's a component of the movie that they're not being subtle about. They kind of make a big deal of it to kind of spell these things out. So yeah, just felt like something that needed to be addressed. So that's my thoughts on Strange Darling. This is a really cool, low-budget movie that has two really great performances in it that are carrying the movie. It kept me guessing. I had a good time watching it. It was short, which I value. I like long movies, but I don't love them. They're hard as far as rewatchability goes and that sort of thing. So yeah, Strange Darling checks a lot of boxes for me. If you're curious about it, definitely go check it out. I want to hear from you in the comments. What did you think of Strange Darling? What did you make of it thematically? What is it doing in your opinion? I'm actually pretty curious to hear from you guys. So definitely leave comments down in the comment section. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. We talk about new movies, old movies, physical media, and horror in general. So with all that being said, please take care and watch more movies.